comment would shatter the controlled atmosphere of America's most respected news magazine, turning a scheduled interview into an explosive confrontation that shocked viewers across the nation. The studio lights were hot that evening. Anderson Cooper sat across from Meghan Markle in the familiar setting of 60 Minutes, his expression calm and professional. The veteran journalist had conducted thousands of interviews over his career, speaking with presidents, world leaders, and celebrities. This was supposed to be just another conversation. Meghan settled into her chair, perfectly positioned for the cameras. She wore an elegant navy dress, her posture poised and confident. Everything about her demeanor suggested this would be another opportunity to share her story, to control the narrative the way she had done in previous interviews. Cooper opened with his signature directness. "Thank you for being here. I think it's important we start with some of the claims you've made publicly. Can we talk about your time in the royal family?" Meghan smiled, that practiced smile she'd perfected over years in the spotlight. "Of course, Anderson. I think people deserve to hear the truth." "The truth is exactly what I'd like to discuss," Cooper replied, his voice steady. "In your previous interviews, you mentioned feeling isolated, unsupported. But there's been some contradiction in the timeline you've presented. Can you clarify when certain events actually took place?" The smile faltered slightly. "I don't think there's been any contradiction, Anderson." Cooper pulled out his notes, his movements deliberate and measured. "Let me be specific. In March of 2021, you stated that you and Harry were married 3 days before your public ceremony. But the Archbishop of Canterbury confirmed that was a private exchange of vows, not a legal marriage. The official marriage happened at the ceremony." Meghan shifted in her seat. "That's semantics, Anderson." "But it's not semantics when you present it as fact to millions of viewers," Cooper countered. "People trust what they hear. Accuracy matters." The temperature in the studio seemed to drop. "Are you calling me a liar?" "I'm asking for clarification," Cooper said evenly. "There's also the security question. You've stated your son was denied security, but royal protocol shows great-grandchildren who aren't direct heirs don't automatically receive it. This wasn't unique to you." "You don't understand what it's like," Meghan interjected, her voice rising. "You're right. I don't. But I understand the importance of presenting facts accurately. You've spoken about your passport being taken, but your travel records show multiple international trips during your time as a working royal. How do you reconcile that?" Meghan's jaw tightened. "This is becoming hostile." "These are fair questions," Cooper responded. "You came here to tell your story. I'm simply asking you to help us understand the details." "The public has been fed lies by the British tabloids," Meghan said sharply. "That may be true," Cooper agreed. "But that doesn't mean every statement you've made has been accurate either. You mentioned not receiving help for your mental health. Yet we've confirmed through sources that you had access to royal physicians. What specifically was denied?" Meghan stood up slightly in her chair, her composure beginning to crack. "How dare you minimize my mental health struggles? How dare you sit there and question my pain?" Cooper remained seated, his voice calm and measured. "I'm not minimizing anything. I'm asking you to provide specific details about what happened. That's not an attack. It's journalism." "No," Meghan snapped. "This is an ambush. This is exactly the kind of treatment I left England to escape. You invited me here under false pretenses." "We invited you here for an interview," Cooper clarified. "An interview involves questions. Sometimes those questions are uncomfortable, but they're necessary." The crew behind the cameras exchanged nervous glances. This wasn't going according to plan. Meghan's publicist, watching from offset, leaned forward in her chair, concern etched across her face. Cooper continued, undeterred by the rising tension. "Let's discuss the wedding itself. You've characterized it as this joyful occasion, but you've also suggested the planning was torturous, that you cried frequently. Staff members have come forward saying they experienced difficulties during that time. There are emails, documented exchanges. What's your response to those claims?" Those people, Meghan said icily, have been paid to say those things. They're lying to protect an institution that protects abusers. That's a serious accusation, Cooper replied. Do you have evidence that these individuals were compensated for their statements? I don't need evidence, Meghan shot back. I know how they operate. But in journalism, we do need evidence, Cooper said. We can't make claims without substantiation. That's the standard we hold ourselves to, and it's the standard I'm asking you to meet as well. Meghan's face flushed. You think you're so clever, don't you? Sitting there with your questions, your smug superiority. You're no different than the rest of them. I'm a journalist, Cooper said simply. My job is to ask questions. Your job, as someone who came here voluntarily, is to answer them. My job, Meghan said, her voice dripping with contempt, is to speak my truth, not to be interrogated by someone who clearly has an agenda. Cooper leaned back slightly, his expression unchanged. What agenda would that be? To make me look bad, Meghan said. To discredit me. To side with the establishment. I'm not siding with anyone, Cooper replied. I'm asking you to back up your claims with facts. That's not an agenda. That's basic journalism. If you make a statement on this program, I have a responsibility to verify it. Meghan stood abruptly, the microphone pack pulling at its cord. This is ridiculous. I came here in good faith. Please sit down, Cooper said calmly. Oh, we're finished, Meghan declared. I don't have to sit here and be attacked. You're not being attacked. You're being asked questions. There's a difference. The publicist rushed onto the set. We need to take a break. Cooper addressed her directly. We agreed to a full hour. We're 20 minutes in. The agreement was for a respectful conversation, the publicist said tersely. This is respectful, Cooper insisted. I've been nothing but professional. Meghan yanked off her microphone, causing feedback to screech through the speakers. You want to know what's legitimate? The way I've been treated? The lies told about me. That's what's legitimate. And those are serious allegations, Cooper said, which is why they need to be examined carefully. You can't just throw out accusations without being willing to discuss them in detail. I don't have to discuss anything with you, Meghan spat. You're not entitled to my trauma. You agreed to this interview, Cooper reminded her. You chose to make these claims public. That comes with scrutiny. Meghan turned to the camera operators. Is anyone seeing this? He's gaslighting me. Right here on national television. Cooper stood up now. Nobody is conspiring against you. We're doing our jobs. We fact-check every guest. You're not being singled out. Don't you dare compare me to other people, Meghan said, her finger pointed accusingly. You have no idea what I've been through. I'm not judging you. I'm asking you questions. If you can't handle questions about your own public statements, perhaps you shouldn't be making those statements in the first place. The words hung in the air. Meghan's face went pale, then red. How dare you, she said. You think you're so important because you're on television? Cooper's expression remained neutral. I think the truth matters. I think accuracy matters. And yes, but I think holding public figures accountable matters. Public figures, Meghan repeated mockingly. Just another woman to humiliate? Gender has nothing to do with this, Cooper said firmly. Liar, Meghan hissed. You wouldn't treat a man this way. I absolutely would. Many times. This isn't about gender. This is about facts. The publicist tried again. Meghan, we should go. But Meghan wasn't finished. You're afraid. Afraid of powerful women who speak their minds. I'm not afraid of you, Cooper said quietly. I'm simply doing my job. Your job is to protect the establishment, to make sure people like me don't get too loud. Well, I've got news for you. I'm not going to be silenced. Nobody's trying to silence you, Cooper said. You've had platforms. You've done interviews. You wrote a book. You have a podcast. What you're experiencing right now is accountability. And there's a difference. Meghan grabbed her purse. You're pathetic. This whole thing is pathetic. This is a hit piece. It's only a hit piece if you have something to hide, Cooper replied. That was the final straw. Meghan stormed toward the edge of the set, but before she left, she turned back. You're a disgrace to journalism, Anderson Cooper. An absolute disgrace. And when people see what you've done here tonight, they'll know exactly who you really are. Cooper stood his ground. The cameras have been rolling this entire time. People will see exactly what happened. I'm comfortable with that. Are you? Meghan didn't answer. Because Cooper had just made the most devastating point. Everything had been recorded. Every question, every deflection, every accusation. Yeah, get me out of here, Meghan said, her voice suddenly small. The producer stepped forward. We had an agreement. Sue me, Meghan shot back. I'm not staying another second. Cooper called after her. We still have 40 minutes scheduled. Then you'll have to answer them yourself, Meghan snapped. Because I'm done. I'm done with you. I'm done with this interview. And I'm done with people who pretend to care about truth while destroying me. She pushed through the studio door, leaving a stunned silence. The crew looked at each other, unsure what to do. Guests didn't just walk out of 60 Minutes. Cooper stood there for a moment. Then he turned to the camera operator. Tell me you got all of that. Every second, the operator confirmed. Cooper nodded. Good, because people need to see this. The director approached. What do you want to do? Cooper thought. We air what we have. We show the questions. We show her responses. We show her walking out. No commentary. Just what happened. Are you sure? Her team is going to come after us. Let them, Cooper said firmly. We did nothing wrong. I asked fair questions based on documented facts. She chose to respond the way she did. That's on her, not us. Someone from the production team came running up. Anderson, her publicist is demanding we delete the footage. Cooper's expression didn't change. That's not going to happen. She signed the release. She agreed to the interview. The footage is ours. They're threatening legal action. Then they can threaten all they want, Cooper said calmly. We're within our rights. We're within our ethical obligations. And most importantly, the public has a right to see what happened when someone comes on this program and makes extraordinary claims. The producer pulled Cooper aside. This is going to be huge. You know that, right? This is going to dominate the news cycle for weeks. I know, Cooper replied quietly. But that doesn't change what we have to do. We have to show it. Not because it's dramatic, or because it'll get ratings, but because it's important. People need to understand that claims require evidence. That sympathy doesn't mean accepting everything at face value. That being a victim of some things doesn't make you incapable of being dishonest about others. Back in the hallway outside the studio, Meghan was on her phone, her voice sharp and frantic. I don't care what you have to do. Get that footage buried. Call the lawyers. Call the network executives. Call everyone. This cannot air. Her publicist tried to calm her down. Meghan, take a breath. Let's think about this strategically. Strategically? Meghan whirled on her. There's nothing strategic about what just happened in there. That was an assassination. A character assassination. He asked you questions, the publicist said carefully. Questions we knew were coming. Questions we prepared for. He ambushed me, Meghan insisted. He had an agenda from the start. The publicist hesitated, then spoke quietly. Meghan, I was watching the whole thing. He was professional. He asked reasonable questions. You're the one who escalated it. Meghan's eyes went wide. Are you serious right now? You're supposed to be on my side. I am on your side, the publicist said, but I'm also being honest with you. Walking out like that, the things you said, it's not going to play well. I don't care how it plays, Meghan said, her voice rising again. I care about being treated with respect. I care about not being interrogated like some kind of criminal. It wasn't an interrogation, the publicist tried again. It was an interview, and you agreed to it. But Meghan had stopped listening. She was already thinking about damage control, about how to spin this, about how to make herself the victim once again. Because that's what she did best. Turn every confrontation, every challenge, every moment of accountability into evidence of persecution. Back in the studio, Cooper sat down in his chair again, the empty seat across from him a stark reminder of what had just transpired. The crew was still processing it all, talking in hushed tones, each trying to understand how an interview had gone so spectacularly wrong. But Cooper knew it hadn't gone wrong. Not really. It had revealed something important, something that people needed to see. When someone builds their entire public persona on being a victim, on being wronged, they often can't handle the moment when someone politely asks them to prove it. The questions he'd asked weren't cruel. They weren't designed to humiliate. They were simply designed to verify, to separate fact from feeling, to understand what had actually happened versus what someone claimed had happened. That was journalism. That was his job. And if someone couldn't handle that basic level of scrutiny, it said far more about them than it did about him. "Anderson," one of the producers called out, "what do you want to say at the end?" "We need some kind of closing statement." Cooper thought about it. What could he say? How could he sum up what had just occurred? "Just say this," he finally decided. "We invited Meghan Markle here tonight to discuss her public statements about her time in the royal family. We asked her questions based on documented facts and timeline inconsistencies. As you saw, she chose to leave before the interview was completed. We'll let viewers draw their own conclusions about what that means." It was simple. It was fair. It was exactly what journalism should be. No spin, no agenda, just the facts of what had occurred. The producer nodded. "Got it. And Anderson? For what it's worth, you handled that perfectly. You stayed calm. You stayed professional. You didn't take the bait when she tried to make it personal." Cooper gave a small smile. "That's the job. Stay calm. Ask questions. Don't get emotional. Don't make it about yourself. Just pursue the truth, wherever it leads." And that's exactly what he had done. He had asked questions. Fair questions. Reasonable questions. Questions that any journalist worth their credentials would have asked. The fact that those questions had resulted in such an explosive reaction wasn't his fault. It was simply revealing. When someone's story can't withstand basic scrutiny, when they respond to questions with accusations and anger rather than answers, it tells you something. It tells you that perhaps the narrative they've been selling isn't quite as solid as they'd like everyone to believe. The cameras would show it all. The calm, measured questions. The increasingly defensive responses. The accusations of bias and agenda. And the dramatic exit. And people would see it for themselves. They would see a journalist doing his job and a guest who couldn't handle being asked to back up her claims. In the end, that's all that mattered. The truth. Not the drama. Not the spectacle. But the simple truth of what had occurred in that studio. A veteran journalist had asked questions. A guest had been unable or unwilling to answer them. And instead of engaging with the substance, she had attacked the messenger and fled. It was, in its own way, the most revealing interview Cooper had ever conducted. Not because of what was said, but because of what wasn't. The questions that went unanswered. The facts that went unaddressed. The accountability that was rejected so vehemently that it could only make people wonder what there was to hide. The studio lights were still hot, and the cameras were still rolling, but the chair across from Anderson Cooper was empty. And somehow, that empty chair said more than hours of conversation ever could. One of the production assistants approached Cooper hesitantly. "Mr. Cooper, should we try to get her back? Maybe if we take a break, let everyone cool down." Cooper shook his head slowly. "No. You can't force someone to answer questions they don't want to answer. And honestly, her refusal to engage speaks volumes. Sometimes what people won't discuss is more telling than what they will. The legal team was already gathering in the corner, discussing potential ramifications. One of them approached Cooper. "We need to be prepared for pushback. Her team is going to claim you were hostile, that you created an unsafe environment." "Let them claim whatever they want," Cooper replied. "We have the footage. Every question I asked was polite and professional. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't interrupt her unnecessarily. I simply asked her to clarify her previous public statements. That's not hostile. That's journalism." Outside the building, Meghan was already in her car, the door shut, the engine running. Her publicist leaned through the window, trying one last time to reason with her. "Meghan, please, we need to think about this. Maybe we should go back in, finish the interview, show that you're not afraid of tough questions." "Are you insane?" Meghan snapped. "I'm not going back in there. That man disrespected me. He questioned my integrity. He treated me like I was lying about everything." "He asked you to clarify inconsistencies," the publicist said carefully. "Yeah, and that's different from calling you a liar." "It's the same thing," Meghan insisted, "and I won't stand for it. I don't have to sit there and let some smug journalist tear me apart on national television." The publicist stepped back from the car. "Okay, if that's your decision. But you need to understand something. This is going to look bad. Walking out, the things you said to him, the way you reacted, it's going to reinforce every criticism people have made about you." "I don't care," Meghan said, though her voice wavered slightly. "The people who love me will understand." But Meghan had already rolled up the window. The car pulled away from the curb, leaving the publicist standing alone on the sidewalk, phone already in hand. Back inside, the editing team was already reviewing the footage. The senior editor turned to the producer. "This is incredible. You can see the exact moment she realizes he's not going to accept her narrative at face value." The producer nodded. "And watch how calm Anderson stays. He doesn't get defensive. He just keeps asking questions." Cooper rejoined them, watching the playback. He saw himself asking about the wedding timeline, saw Meghan's initial deflection, saw the moment her composure began to crack. "You know what strikes me?" he said quietly. "She never actually answered any of the questions. Not a single one. She deflected. She attacked. She changed the subject." The editor nodded. "When you asked about security, she said you didn't understand. When you asked about the passport, she called it hostile, but she never explained the contradictions." "Because she can't," Cooper said. "If the facts don't support your version, and you have two choices, admit you were wrong or attack the person asking questions. She chose the latter." "Are we sure we want to air this?" someone asked. Cooper turned to face them. "Yes, because if we bury it, we're complicit. We're saying it's okay to make claims without evidence, to attack anyone who questions you. I'm not willing to do that." As the team prepared for broadcast, Cooper returned to his dressing room. He sat down and took a deep breath. He knew what was coming. The backlash, the accusations, but he had done his job. There was a knock. The producer stuck his head in. "Her team released a statement. They're claiming you created a hostile environment." Cooper smiled. "Of course. What else would they say?" An hour later, Cooper was back in the studio. He looked at the camera and spoke calmly. "What you're about to watch is the complete footage of tonight's interview. 20 minutes in, she chose to leave.